Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Insights and Innovations session today. We have our amazing partners at JCDecaux joining us today with a bit of an update of kind of the world of outdoor. We've got Randall, Scott, and Andrew joining us today. We're going to talk about planning in the new world, and it is ever-changing. We're going to talk about AI, how that kind of works with it as well, and then also omni-channel opportunities as well. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the amazing Andrew to take things over, and I'll keep my big mouth shut. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Sam, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. I hope you're all well, and then welcome to our session on planning out of home in the brave new world. But before we get started, I just wanted to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. In my case, it's the Wurundjeri people, and pay my respects to elders past and present. On to the next slide, Scotty. My name's Andrew Work, and I'm a Group Business Director for the independent agency team in Melbourne. You won't be hearing too much more from me today. You're in the safe hands of Scott and Randall, who I'd like to introduce. We've got Scott Jenkins, who's the Group Manager in the Research, Strategy and Effectiveness team. And then we've got the great Randall Taylor, who's the Senior Customer Innovation Manager up in Sydney. So I'll pass it over to Scotty and Randall.
Thanks, mate. Randall and I both definitely like to talk, so we'll do our best to get through this in the 40 minutes that we have left and not go over time. But yeah, we want to talk to you about some cool themes that are emerging in out-of-home and how you can improve your out-of-home planning in what we call a brave new world with so many different technologies and emerging trends coming through. I think to start with, we would just want to acknowledge the past and some of the things that have happened historically and how they're informing what we're actually doing today as a business and where we're going. For those of you that don't know actually how JCDecaux started, it wasn't just about putting a billboard on a billboard or putting a poster on a poster. It started with this idea of public utility. So actually, Jean-Claude Decaux had a vision that he could improve public infrastructure, particularly things like bus stops in the city of Lyon, and actually approached the local councils to say, hey, we'll put posters up, make advertising revenue out of that, and with that, I'll build and maintain better public infrastructure for you. So the idea was not just advertising for advertising's sake, but to actually give something back to people. So I guess that's happening today. And so the trends will talk about how a mobile device offers you more than just advertising, and we want to help out-of-home connect with that. But just a bit of interesting story about the past of JCDecaux and actually how the business got started. Look, I won't labour on this too much because I'm not here to sell to you, but today we are the #1 out-of-home advertising company worldwide with over 1 million advertising assets across more than 80 countries. So we are an enormous business, and this actually helps us locally where we can use our global outreach to actually inform what we're doing here in Australia. So if we look to more of some of the recent history and going 10 or more years ago, the smartphone revolution really changed the game. Suddenly there was an entire new way of reaching consumers, moving beyond, I guess, your traditional mediums. And that's really informing what we're doing today. And it's had a significant impact on out-of-home. So we've got to explore a lot about mobile and how out-of-home can better connect with that ecosystem and how it actually supercharges out-of-home planning. We actually predicted this in some way, not we, but the industry as a whole. There's insights from 2012, so 11 years ago, saying that over the next 10 years, we believe that technology is going to really change urban environments and form a far closer relationship between out-of-home and consumers. And a lot of what we'll show you today actually shows that technology, particularly a mobile device, is better connecting consumers with out-of-home and better connecting brands, therefore, with consumers as well. So some of those historic and emerging truths that are actually coming through that will inform the future of out-of-home is, one is that because of the mobile device, out-of-home is rapidly moving from being a really passive medium to more of an active medium. We've got a couple of case studies that show that, how out-of-home is more than just a billboard or a poster. It can actually be something that consumers actively engage with. Audiences do expect now to see true offline and online integration. They're not siloed separate channels, but channels that need to connect seamlessly together for a better brand experience. if we're thinking everything about the way you're interacting with consumers, it's about how can you entertain and provide utility to your consumers to prompt a response. And that's kind of going back to where we started about providing utility to audiences, not just being a poster or a billboard for the sake of it. And also, just the truth is that bravery in marketing requires experimentation, taking risks, celebrating failures and learning from them, and using data for that constant learning. So a lot of what we're going to show you today is sort of on the edge of what we can do out of home, and we're hoping that we can invite a lot of you to actually take part in being part of that bravery in marketing. So how are we actually using all of what I just said about the past and the present and some emerging technology to actually step up and set up the future for JCDecaux? So there are three trends that we're going to take you through today. I'll take you through the concept of the public and the private screen. Then Randall will jump in with the omnichannel opportunity and how AI is changing everything and specifically playing a role for out of home. So as I mentioned, the first topic is the public and the private screen. So media consumption these days is often taken place on a series of smaller screens that are watched at home or alone. So that's your TV or your laptop or your tablet or your mobile device. And that's a really, really common way to consume media these days. However, that's in certain occasions, but going outside is constant. And that screen we've seen out of home is that connection between the public and the private screen. So we really have a philosophy that how can we bridge the public constant screens with the private screens that are, as I said, more private, more often watched alone or at home. So taking that public mass absorbed media and connecting it better with those private screens. We can kind of connect the two together through, I guess, a traditional brand funnel. So the public screen is really about how can you broadcast a message and get really wide reach? How can you build trust and credibility in a brand? How can you build recognition of a brand and brand codes and all those longer term brand building effects in mass? Whereas the private screen is that ability to be really highly targeted, speak to one person at once. You can drive a response, drive people to a website or online to buy something. And it's really probably more geared towards that short-term sales effect and conversion. So if you think a bit about the funnel, we want to help better connect. So we're actually driving people through the funnel through out-of-home media. So with that in mind, we actually wanted to understand how the public and private screens work together. So we're going to share a little bit of a case study here to provide some evidence that actually the public screen is really, really valuable when influencing the private screen. So as I mentioned earlier, we are a really large global business, and the power of that is we can access data and research and innovation from our international counterparts. So the team at JCDecaux UK partnered with a company called Lumen to conduct a study to understand what actually happens when people are exposed to digital out of home and then mobile advertising. Is there any impact on things like message takeout and recall and brand attribution and those sorts of elements to actually prove that, yes, priming audiences with the public screen is going to make your private media much more effective. So in a nutshell, they spoke to 600 people in the UK. Basically, these people watched a video with potential exposure to digital out of home. They weren't told what they were looking for, but in the video, there were ads essentially superimposed on digital out of home assets. So as I'm going through, they'll get exposure to digital out of home, but didn't necessarily know what they were looking for, but they were getting exposure to an out of home campaign. Then similarly, they were exposed to social media pages that they were asked to scroll through and have a look around with advertising on it, and some of it corresponded to the digital out of home. So essentially, it's the same advertiser communicating on social media as the digital out of home. And then at the end, they answered a questionnaire to actually understand, did they recall the campaign and what was their response to that campaign. So the first thing to note, hopefully you can see these videos playing, is that there's actually a heat map of people's gaze on the video. And you can see that the first one on the left is about consumers that saw the social pages but hadn't had exposure to the digital out of home prior. But the latter group that actually did view the digital out of home had a much greater heat map. You can see there's much more attention being paid to all different elements of the out of home creative. And actually that increase in dwell time on the creative as well. So to put that into, I guess, a more data for you and the actual outcome. So the actual likelihood to view the mobile ads wasn't necessarily stronger amongst those that saw the digital out of home first, but the average dwell time on the mobile ad was significantly higher. So it went up from an average of 2 seconds dwelling on the social ad to 3 seconds on the mobile social ad amongst those that had actually seen the digital out of home previously. So that prior exposure to the digital out of home is having a significant impact on dwell time on the mobile ads. Actually, to go with that, the longer they spent on the digital out of home as well, the longer on mobile. So there's an increasing impact. If you have a campaign that's attracting a lot of dwell and attention in the out of home space, that's going to create even longer dwell time on the mobile social ads. So just really proving that impact of the priming of the out of home on the mobile activity. That increased engagement actually leads to better recall as well. So when we could look at spontaneous recall of, hey, do you remember an advertiser and who was it? There was 133% increase in spontaneous recall amongst those that saw both, and prompted recall was 65% higher amongst those that saw both as well, compared to those that didn't see the digital out of home as well. In terms of message takeout as well, when they were prompted with the key messages, it was a lot stronger, 18% stronger amongst those that actually saw the digital out of home versus those that did not see the digital out of home prior to the mobile. And ultimately, it gets us to this equation that we call 2 + 2 = 5. We know that that's not true, but essentially we're saying if you take the average dwell time of 2 seconds for a digital out of home only or a mobile only, when you combine them together, you're actually getting a combined dwell time of 5 seconds. So actually there is an increased effect from seeing both the public and the private screen. So it's just that proof that getting those broadcast impressions, getting the publicly digested content via out of home is going to make all of your private screen activity work that much harder. We've actually seen that play out here with the technology that came around again through the last few years. I'm sure everyone's a little bit sick of QR codes and doesn't want to think about it, because I think it carries some memories around COVID, but that became really valuable to advertisers. It's a way of actually priming and then directly driving connection to the private screen. So one example of an advertiser worked with us was the Life You Could Save. They ran a campaign across a small format portfolio with QR codes, directed people to download the audio book and learn more about how they could do their part to help end world poverty. And there were really, really strong results. This is one example of a brand that's used it, but we had great feedback from the executive director of the Life You Could Say, just proving that the conversion rate was incredibly strong and showing how out of home is that priming mechanism can actually help drive immediate action in the private screen space. So QR codes is just one way that I guess you can start to even further bridge the link between the private screen and the public screen. So what does that mean? Brands need to understand the way they can optimize the public and private screen strategies to enhance your customer or your audience experience. And for us, we really see a future where out of home is no longer planned in a silo. Sometimes out of home campaigns are just bought, not thinking about other channels. But we believe the role it plays in all of your other media is so crucial that it needs to not be bought in a silo and actually be considered as part of a wider strategy. And now I'm going to hand over to Randall to talk about the omnichannel opportunity.
Thank you, Scott. So I'll take you through sections 2 and 3, but I think we would be remiss to not sort of start with a bit of an ethos that we have at Decaux. And I think one of the main things that we really like to start with is audience planning at every single touch point that you have whenever you have a campaign in and out of home sense. It's really about making sure your brands and the marketers out there that sort of enlist your help reach the audiences across a network. So for us, I think it's really been a bit of a backbone for an evolution in terms of the insights and planning capabilities. If we jump to the next slide, Scott. Thank you. We really started with tabulated survey data. You know, it can be the likes of Roy Morgan or Emma or Nielsen, which is pictured, but it very quickly grew into the need for geospatial intelligence and evolving into the idea of where audiences are likely to reside and working with different kind of vendors to create these beautiful kind of visuals. And then further to that, as Scott mentioned and did touch on a little bit earlier, sort of the introduction of mobile technology and what that really means for planning and out of home. And you know, a lot of players, including ourselves, we use this kind of technology and audience movement to sort of create very flexible opportunities to make sure you reach audiences at the right time with the right message. So device level data at scale is captured across our entire network at JCDecaux. We leverage some strategic partnerships with different kind of vendors. The one in particular here on the slide, we work with Mobile Wallet to understand the audiences that interact day in, day out with our assets. And further to that, what that allows is some really interesting opportunities, not only for planning and activating, but also enriching our programmatic offering, which allows you to sort of tap into time-stamped data to sort of optimize your exposure, but also your trading opportunities as well. One of the next things that we have sort of enlisted to sort of enrich our offering at JCDecaux is our partnership with Experian. And what Experian as a data supplier means for us is that we can take those audiences that have been seen in proximity to our assets at a national level, and we can actually understand and interrogate who these audiences are. So it's not just about you know, audience A or audience B passing by a billboard, but you can basically understand audiences that may be of low credit risk versus audiences that spend big on retail experiences like Black Friday, or that intend to go overseas in the next 12 months. So it really adds that illustrative piece when you are planning out of home with JCDecaux. So it lends itself quite nicely to a really interesting piece, which is the idea of simultaneous targeting. So because we are working with mobile technology, it can be used for out of home, but given that we are using a digital connector piece or the mobile device as a connection, we can actually push through those audiences as well, which brings us to our next kind of partnership. And this has been a really interesting onboarding process for us. We struck up a partnership with Adobe Audience Manager back in early 2021, which allows us to take those planning audiences that you see supplied from Experian and also with Mobile Wallet, but also push through those planning audiences to your digital channels, so you can sort of activate it accordingly across digital ecosystems. And we've got a case study a little bit later. But if we jump to the next slide, Scott, what that means for you is that we can start with an audience at the heart of the planning with JCDecaux. We can add the illustration through our strategic partnership with Experian. And what we can do is actually have a connection to digital ecosystems through Adobe Audience Manager. So it's really taking that kind of out-of-home siloed manner that Scott mentioned a little bit earlier, and sort of breaking down the barriers to making sure you're reaching the same audiences across all the different screens, whether it's public or private, and sort of doubling down on your overall channel strategies. So in essence, it's basically priming audiences through the tech infrastructure that we've sort of invested in out of home, and allowing you to have that seamless conversation across digital ecosystems. So on the left-hand side, you can see we've got the wonderful Cartier with watches that I cannot afford, but it allows you to have that kind of simultaneous conversation. So the omni-channel activation piece, because the audiences have already been verified in the out-of-home sense, we onboard that along with different sort of data opportunities through Experian and Mobile Wallet into Audience Manager. And then we usually push those segments through to our partner DSPs. And we've activated with all the major DSPs across out of home. So it can be DV360, it can be Yahoo, the Trade Desk, Omobi. There are also opportunities for first-party data integrations. And it's kind of one of my little bastions for 2023. So by all means, send through an email with questions. We do welcome them. But yeah, there's an interesting piece there. But I think the next slide, if we jump to the next one, Scott, is a bit of a case study. So this was a programmatic activation that we did in partnership with Sixt. So Sixt was a new entrant to the truck and car hire category. And they sort of came to us with a bit more of a limited budget. And they wanted to really raise brand recognition and awareness quite quickly. So we thought a really efficient way of doing that was through our programmatic solutions. It was across all of our programmatically enabled sites, which was airport, rail, small format, and large format. And we worked in partnership with Yahoo to sort of activate that accordingly. And what that looked like from a results point of view, after we understood where the sixth audience was and the panels that they interact with, we took that planning segment and actually pushed it through to Yahoo. Yahoo was then able to sort of facilitate the measurement pieces on behalf of Sixt. And one of the great things about this particular application is you can have those kind of real business metrics to sort of help bolster the conversations about a home and really prove the effectiveness that it has. The 4 stats that we've got on the slide, you know, their auto club segment grew during the campaign period by 3.8 times percent. Yahoo also worked with their geographical location partner, NEAR, and they sort of did a control and exposed methodology, and they saw that the Decaux segment was actually 35% more likely to visit a Sixt location after exposure to the campaign. Awareness of the Sixt rental discount sort of messaging that they had in market at the time grew by about 8%. And what's really a key thing for me, and I know it's the smallest stat on the screen, and sometimes in marketing we don't like small stats, but you know, small are mighty, is that unaided awareness of the brand actually grew from 1% when they activated in February last year to about 6% by the end of the campaign in June. So it really does speak volumes to how out of home can sort of bolster and add those kind of more measurable conversations when you are working with clients and advertisers. And I think one of the interesting things as well with our investment in mobile technology at Decaux is it allows us to sort of really tap into insights generation. So a lot of our reporting tools can, you know, can be slightly exclusive of that kind of more rich sort of illustration that you might be more accustomed to in terms of the digital channels and their reporting capabilities. But we're sort of building out opportunities to look at audiences that are exposed to campaigns, what age and gender they are, what POIs they interact with, what do they do for a job, what kind of category do they over-index in, and all that kind of stuff to really give you campaign insights off the back of your last execution to inform your next execution with Decaux. So it's really about having that enhanced campaign performance and driving that effectiveness. So the future applications for this, it's really about creating an ecosystem that offers seamless audience integrations to make sure that the offline sort of really does bolster and empower the online experience and the online performance. And one of the key things for that is our Adobe audience piece and taking those segments from the great outdoors and reactivating with them online and understanding that post-campaign conversation as well. And number 3, so AI changes everything. Unfortunately, at Decaux, ChatGPT may not be able to be accessed, but I think one of the hot topics about artificial intelligence is it's really about understanding how does it affect me and my job. I think it's a really great complement to us, and I bite my words. This screenshot was done before it might have been forbidden. That's okay. We asked our ChatGPT sort of interface to kind of write a campaign about a billboard for itself, and the response was really quite interesting. We'll send through the presentation a little bit later, but it really just kind of goes through step by step, what a great large format campaign looks like. Smart little machine, if you don't mind me saying so myself. But what's interesting is at Decaux, it's not necessarily about ChatGPT, but what we've understand is machine learning really makes for more effective campaigns. And this next particular section walks through a few examples of how machine learning and AI has kind of been harnessed to sort of drive more effective campaigns from your day-to-day. One of our most recent, actually probably not one of our most recent, one of our sort of more mature releases has been JCDecaux Optics, which is from our global data warehouse called JCDecaux. And it was in partnership with a neurodynamic model, which sort of originated from the University of Oxford. And it's an AI prediction tool that basically predicts where the viewer's gaze is likely to fall across the creative. And what it does is it gives you this really rich heat map to see where the viewer's gaze is likely to fall within the actual creative itself. So we've had some great success Thank you, Scott. We've had some great success with brands and advertisers on actually working with us and creative agencies with different kind of iterations, playing around with the size of taglines, what does the brand logo mean in terms of its saliency, and then also the creative itself. And you can see here on the slide that we've run some really quick opportunities for Uber Eats. And surprise, surprise, the results are great. The tagline itself, the logo, even the creative quite stands out. I think this was a small format campaign as well. So, small format gives you a bit more of an opportunity to sort of engage with the consumer as it has a higher dwell time. But these kind of conversations allow us to have more flexible and nimble sort of feedback loops, both with yourselves and with creative agencies, to make sure that you are driving effectiveness and cut through with your advertising at Decaux. Second to JCDecaux Optics is probably a tool that's very close to my heart, JCDecaux Universe. And JCDecaux Universe is a sales planning and optimization tool, and it's got so much information sitting inside it. It's a sort of a JCDecaux created tool, and what it does is it pulls together live availabilities, costings, revenue. It also has audience information in there. It has geographical capabilities for route planning and POI proximity planning as well. But what it does is it really underpins every single schedule that you see at Decaux, and it's all about efficiency and speed to market. So what had previously taken 3 to 5 days might potentially take down to 1 to 2 days. And I'm pretty sure Turk might be a little bit upset that I'm sort of saying that in public, but that's okay.
Still brief us with plenty of notice, please.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit of time.
But I think the next screenshot really does sort of show you, sort of lifts the bonnet on what Universe can do. And it's all about empowering our sales team to make smarter decisions that is fueled by data to make sure that your campaigns reach the right audiences and really sticks to that ethos. But one of the things that really underpins Universe is the machine learning algorithm. So we take audience very seriously at Decaux, and what we have sort of done within the Universe systems is looked at the way in which we can apply machine learning to surfacing the right kind of assets, whether it's reach or audience interactions or whatever, to kind of automate an asset distribution, which allows you to sort of meet your KPIs depending on the schedule. Thank you. And I believe the next section is a use case for Uber Eats. You can see that I might have had takeaway food on the mind, but that's all right. It's nothing quite like a poke bowl at 12:30 in the afternoon. But this section basically takes you through how we can sort of activate these segments across the ecosystem at speed, and understand how we can sort of drive performance quickly. So as I've sort of harked on, and feel free to sort of tell me that I am going on about audience, but I love my audiences. We always start with the audience. So with Uber Eats, in this particular opportunity, we've understand the audience that sort of indexes highly against the category, and we sort of create these bespoke segments at Decaux within our Universe platform. And here we've chosen the Donut Out audience and mapped where they live in the great city of Melbourne. So here you can see in Melbourne, when you're looking at the wining and dining audience, that there's representation across the east and northeast and more inner city suburbs of Melbourne. And basically the way to read the map is the hotter the area, the more likely they are to reside within that particular region, whilst the colder the area, the less likely they are. So this kind of is your first layer of targeting. And what we can do from there is we can actually cut off the key regions that sort of sit in the statistically significant areas. So what we've done here is isolated the key regions and basically named it or badged it the Uber Eats target audience zones. So it really is eliminating wastage in your out-of-home planning to really make sure that you have that targeted response. Further to that, once we've actually sort of identified the geographical regions, we can actually lasso our assets. We actually don't take lassos and lasso our assets. It's more of an analogy, but I do hope that one day I might lasso an asset, but I guess we'll find out. And we can look at the key formats within that particular region and actually produce a bespoke site list to making sure that you are reaching that Uber Eats audience. From there, we then look at the way in which the mobility data from those audiences actually proliferates throughout the entire network again. So you've kind of got your building blocks as you sort of continue your story in engaging that Uber Eats audience. So our recommendation for this particular solution has a skew towards small format and rail, so we can actually look at those assets and isolate the ones that have the higher audience interactions, and again, sort of further bolster the opportunity off the back of that. From there, we know that sponsorships and sort of key events might pop up if you've got some tentpole programming or whatever's sort of sitting on your list in terms of your wider channel strategy. We can actually use out of home as a really great, easy win to sort of support that sponsorship or event programming opportunity. So here we've got, Uber Eats might have a sponsorship with Suncorp Stadium, so we can actually further add to the mix the proximity targeting to key POIs. So what we've done here is looked at a radius of about 5K around Suncorp Stadium and sort of surfaced the assets that are within proximity. And again, sort of jumping ship to Brizzy, you can see that with the state of origin, we can further expand that kind of proximity ruling to a 10K radius. And we can also do inbound versus outbound. So you're kind of looking at audiences that are going to and from the stadium. And Uber Eats, you might have audiences that are leaving the stadium after kickoff for like a late night feed from Macca's. I know that I used to have a competition sometimes whenever I come home and see how fast Uber would arrive before I'd get home, and generally it was pretty good on time. But yeah, so that kind of again adds that sort of proximity piece. And I think one of the key things is that it really is a tool that's quite flexible and malleable. You've got the audience interactions that sort of give you that audience coverage. And then we can look at expanding that in terms of what else the audience interacts with across our assets. But then we take in other KPIs such as POI or route planning to really give you a full body response with out of home to sort of drive, saliency and top of mind awareness, not only among sports loving audiences, but also the dining out audience as well. And again, because we do use mobile device technology, it really does open up the opportunities for seamless integration. So as I mentioned with Adobe Audience Manager, there are particular sort of avenues that we can look at first-party data opportunities as well. So what does the future mean? Well, aside from AI, and so it's not taking your jobs just as yet, hopefully, fingers crossed, what it allows for us is to just be more connected. And I think one of the key things for us, particularly moving into the cookieless future, is it's more and more important about data and how we plan and share data and have those open, transparent sort of avenues of communication. And what that allows for us and for you as well is it allows for those recommendations and handcrafted strategic inputs to really reach those audiences no matter where they are. And I guess 3 things to leave you with before I hand it back over to the great Scott Jenkins is so the public and private screens really do converge. And Scott walked you through the Lumen piece from JCDecaux UK and understanding how priming in the out-of-home world really does sort of amplify results and attentiveness within digital ecosystems. And then I walked you through the opportunities of what an omnichannel piece means using both audience and mobile technology, but also looking at programmatic executions and working with different kind of partners to really unlock effectiveness for your brands and measuring that. I guess the third sort of leaving part for that is artificial intelligence and machine learning and what it really means for strategy and innovation within the out-of-home lens. And I think one of the key things is this is just the beginning of the conversation. Reach out, send an email. We're always happy to sort of chat through offline what that means for you and your portfolio. Cool.
Thanks, Randall. Just to bring us home with the 5 or so minutes that we have remaining, I think we've spoken a lot about different trends and technology and our platforms that particularly are helping a lot when it comes to planning. But we know that completing the full story of actually the impact that it's having for your brands is the most important part. So I just want to talk a little bit about opportunities when it comes to measurement of your campaigns. We know that through our JCDecaux consult survey, which is the survey we run yearly, or we try to do twice a year amongst our clients to understand what's important to them and how the satisfaction is with JCDecaux. We know that attribution, measurement, and return on investment come up consistently as having the greatest impact on the future of out of home. So this helps us know that we really need to focus on these areas, not just the planning, but actually how we're measuring the activities are running with us. So this is where a program that we internally called JCDecaux Proof came to life. So this is about us providing a range of opportunities for all of our advertising partners to actually collaborate with us on really influential media effectiveness studies and research. We quite often conduct sort of smaller pieces of research, but we want to get a bit bigger and more involved. And I think the key word is collaborate with our partners to actually build studies that prove that what we're doing really works. So that could be whether it's looking at, again, to use the funnel kind of approach, measuring the impact we're having on brand building, so increasing the mental availability of your brands, increasing consideration or desire for your brands, or actually attributing JCDecaux campaigns to lower funnel business objectives, both online and offline, looking at things like sales, acquisition, and visitation. And we know historically this has probably been the weak area for out of homes to prove our impact on those lower funnel objectives. And we have a breadth of capabilities. So there are a range of providers that we have either worked with already or have solutions that we've already explored and set up. And we're just looking for the right campaigns, the right clients that want to partner with us to actually get some great measurement off the ground. So I'll take you through one of our first case studies just to quickly show what we're doing, which was with Helga's, which hopefully most of you are familiar with, is a brand that sells bread and wraps in major supermarkets around Australia. So we actually worked with Unpacked by Flybuys on this, which is the data arm of Flybuys, that again, hopefully you'll be familiar with, to prove the impact of the campaign on sales. Really crucially for us, we were actually lucky enough to be the sole media support for Helga's during the campaign, which ran in H2 last year. So there's no other above the line media. There was some below the line support by the way of point of sale displays and things like that. But there's no TV, digital, radio, and no other out of home, just the JCDecaux activity. So we had a really great, I guess, control to prove that what JCDecaux was doing was actually having an impact. Helga's ran a campaign with us across our transit and small format network using two of our new ways of buying, our small format. So they had a scale campaign to really achieve the mass reach that they needed to speak to as many Australians as they could and build a brand. And then we actually hand selected panels that were within 100 meters of supermarkets around Australia to really get that path to purchase coming through. Now, essentially what we did is we worked with Flybuys to look at the exposure areas of the campaign. So the areas where we had a presence for transit and small format, and then link that to nearby Coles stores to actually show that, hey, where there's exposure to the JCDecaux campaign, was there an uplift in Helga's product sales from the pre-campaign to the during campaign period? And essentially what we saw is that was the case. So at the basic level, there was an 8% increase in sales volume, so just the pure number of units that were sold in those exposed Coles stores went up by 8%. One of the real positives that we could look through Flybuys was whether they were the same customers buying the product again, or actually customers that hadn't bought Helga's before based off their historic Flybuys data. We actually saw the biggest increase in new customers coming through. So that's a real positive for Helga's. And ultimately, there was a 12% increase in sales revenue because they actually had to increase the price, like many other brands, of Helga's products during the campaign. So they were selling more product to more new customers at an increased price. So there was actually an increase of 12% revenue. So there is actually a full case study, about 20 slides of details and methodology and the approach to this. This is just a very short snapshot, but I guess it just highlights what we're trying to do more with brands to actually prove that we're not just great at planning campaigns, but that planning has a genuine impact for our advertising partners. That's going to be enough from us to wrap it up, but we really think the future is bright. Not only when you're out of home after a few years of lockdowns, potentially for those of us in Melbourne, but also when you're investing in out of home. We really think it's a bright space for advertisers. So yeah, that's it from us.
Thank you very much, Scott, Randall, and Andrew. Thank you very much, JCDecaux, for all of your insights and interesting updates today. Really great. Guys, just wrapping things up. Thank you for joining, Melbourne people. We look forward to seeing you later in the week. Brisbane teams, we're going to see you later on, I think next month. And any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to the IMAA. Talk to everyone soon. Have a great day, guys. Stay warm.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.